And on ls, here you have how it works, and this is the command that I just executed. So feel free and to explore and understand how the AWS CLI works. We are going to be talking more about that in the future. After, we're going to be using a lot of the JavaScript SDK. So it's so we have here on /tools the set of SDKs that we have, and here in this list you see that we have two flavors of the JavaScript SDK. So we have the Node.js and the browser SDK. So let's take a good look about that. So those are two flavors of the same JavaScript SDK. The AWS SDK for JavaScript is more suitable for the Node.js environment, and you can use Node.js modules, tools of the Node.js environment such as Power. And you can see that there is a class, for example, called S3, and a service here, a package S3, and here you can see all the operations that we have. One of them, that ls, is actually list buckets. So if you want to see the same thing on the Node.js, you can do this with this SDK, and with the browser script is pretty much the same thing, but with a few differences to accommodate for the browser, and such as interacting with a single-threaded environment and generating HTML and accessing it from the file like this. So those are three different ways you can access S3, but it is essentially the same thing. You're making the same calls to the same HTTP-based service. Okay, so all right, let's see. It seems to be a small problem on the stream. I hope you guys can hear me okay. Let me just double check. So before we move on to the next step, which is we're going to store some static content on Amazon S3. So let's go and just build let's just build that website already. So it's going, let me create an index.html file, very simple one. Let me save it as index.html. On that dev breaklist directory, and let's do this. So open HTML, close it, on H1. Let's just create a very simple thing. Hello Twitch. So here's the thing. I can go to Amazon S3 and create a bucket and just store that, or do it on the CLI, or do it on the console. The things that I'm going to do only once, I usually do on the console. The things that I need to do repetitively, or I would automate with the CLI or the content. So we're going just to create any kind of bucket here. So I will create this one called breakless .bike, for example. With this bucket, I can serve content throughout and store any kind of content as long as it's static. And the thing is, it must have a unique name, so you can't have the same bucket name in your account or in any other account, because this is registered on the DNS. And that's the only restriction. And of course there are some naming restrictions. You can't name it like weird characters. You must be anything you can type on a URL is valid here. And then there is the region. So it's very important that you understand what AWS regions are today and how do they operate and how does that relate to content delivery. And the question is, how do you choose an AWS region? So to understand that, let's take a look at that product page. I'll close the other tabs that we have so far. And just below the product, there is this map with the AWS regions and edge locations. So those yellow dots that are marked as regions are the place in the world where the AWS services run. So we have regions in pretty much everywhere, and S3, EC2, and all those services run there. But the thing is, some services are special in terms of latency and some other requirements and require a point of presence closer to the user. For example, if a given user is, I don't know, in India, for example, we have a couple edge locations, and it's going to be an interesting case, but let's think about somewhere that wouldn't have a region and an edge location. For example, if you are in Argentina, so you would need to be reaching the closest AWS region, which may be Brazil or maybe elsewhere. But we also may have this edge locations closer to you. So a user that is sometime in Argentina may be closer in network terms to the Rio or São Paulo edge locations than the edge location in São Paulo itself. Or, for example, if the user is in New Zealand, which is somewhere, I'm not testing my geography skills right now, they may go to the edge location that is closer. And we are going to talk more about that when we talk about CloudFront. CloudFront is the service that uses those edge locations to deliver HTTP content caches from cache. And also our DNS service, Route 53, goes through those locations as well. So this is the thing to understand. AWS regions will feature all services except those very few, such as DNS and caches that will need to be closer, and the CDN, that's CloudFront, that will need to be actually much closer to the user than anybody else. So I hope that was clear enough. But the thing is, so for example, if I live in São Paulo, Brazil, does that mean that I should always choose the Brazil region? And that's not really always the case. For example, let me show you a third-party website called cloudping.info, so we can see which is the best latency on my network. You have to understand that this is an HTTP and not very reliable, as it considers the network, your Wi-Fi or 3G latency, so doesn't take this too strongly. But you can see here that I'm much closer to the Europe regions in Ireland and Frankfurt, as I'm in beautiful Madrid right now, than I would be from any other region. So does this mean that I should use always Ireland or Frankfurt and couldn't AWS make that automatic for me? And this is usually no, because there is a few more details on that. To understand this, let's check the pricing page on S3 on AWS amazon.com/S3/pricing. This is always the pattern for pricing pages, and you can see here in this page that storage prices in S3 varies by region. This meaning that if I'm on the United States, for example in Virginia, S3 standard storage meaning the highest level of durability we have. I'll explain storage tiers just a bit later, but this is the standard pricing for S3, and it's 2 cents, a little bit more than 2 cents per gigabyte. If we change to other regions, for example Frankfurt, you can see that here it's 2 cents and 45, not 2.3 cents, but 2.45 cents. And even if we change to other regions, we can see more differences in prices. But before we do that, let's understand what those features mean: standard storage, infrequent access, and Glacier. And so standard storage is the highest level of durability that S3 provides. So you should be storing those objects that you really need frequent and constant access on standard storage. When you store an object on standard storage, it copies to at least 3 data centers automatically, and then even more redundant as time goes. And this is why, and this results in these costs. The standard infrequent access has a lower SLA and different characteristics of pricing, so that it's ideal for those data that you're going to upload once and probably don't look to it much frequently. For example, billing data, for example, or telemetry data that you're going to upload and process once a month or once weekly or once in a while, but not hit it like you would hit a web page. And Glacier storage is for cold storage, for permanent backups, for things that you're going to upload and never look at it again. It can be stored on code disks for what you care, on that disks, whatever. It's something that you hope you never need probably, but if you need, such as audit data and archival of documents, this is ideal for Glacier. And it's the most as inexpensive as possible. And now if we change to São Paulo, you can see that we don't have Glacier there. So consider that the price and availability of services and features may be different by region. In São Paulo, for example, unfortunately we don't have Glacier there, and standard storage starts in 4 cents, a little bit more than 4 cents. So for this, let's go to use standard US East, okay? And so we're just going to go and choose Virginia. All right. Next. Oh, I already have a test with those, so let's call it something different. For example, prod.breakless.py, for example. We can change that afterwards. We can't change that afterwards, but we can alias to any DS name that we want and make a lot of different things with it. So with versioning, login, and tags, you can control and keep other versions of your objects. You can log everybody that gets in. You can tag with a different name. You can set properties, permissions and whatnot, I will just create the bucket with the full settings. So here is our S3 bucket. So for those of you that just joined the stream, let me just recap what's going on here. So we are starting a stream for live coding on AWS. This meaning that all content here is going to be very interactive and driven by you. It's going to be very friendly to beginners. That doesn't mean it's basic. We're going to dive pretty deep, but we are going to answer all questions. And it's going to be JavaScript first, so I make sure most people understand it, but we can and will use other languages and tools. And another thing that I'd like to say is that I'm pretty experienced at one specific area, that's data collection, analysis, and visualization. And we're going to be building apps for that. So we're going to be, in this series, we're going to be very focused on data applications. I think this is it. Okay. So please, this is just the idea that we're going to build. This is the kind of application that I see most startups doing and most customers, but in different aspects. So we're going to go from the very first beginning of content delivery up to machine learning, business intelligence, and whatnot, but one step at a time, right? So today we're going to be creating the project and getting it up. So this is the big bang of our project. We're going to create the thing, put it online, and have you guys accessing. Thanks a lot, Technobrat. I hope you do enjoy it. And again, please make sure you send requirements my way. I really appreciate you guys being here, and we're going to be I'm going to be streaming weekly. Let me show you guys how you can get more information on that. Here's my Twitter alias, so you can always be updated and find more information about myself and some funny quote and cheesy quotes, I hope, and always the time, and be notified of the tweets. Okay, so this is where we are going, and today we just created an open source project. We introduced the AWS console, AWS CLI, and AWS for JavaScript. We talked a bit of those, and now we are doing the static content delivery on S3. We just created one S3 bucket, and let me just another place you can find more information is on the twitch.tv/AWS page. The updated schedule will be posted there as well. And also, I do have a personal website that I'll share with you guys just a bit later when it have more information. And this is the S3 bucket that we just created. Let's upload that HTML file. So upload, add files, and get that dev. We're going to be using this a lot. So that index.html, set permissions. I will just go with the full settings for everything and just upload it. And ta-da! We have a file uploaded to S3. and we can see it here. And again, the same thing can be done on the CLI. So if I go to that terminal, I can AWS S3 ls S3 prod break class spike, and here you can see our HTML file. So again, it's the very same, two different interfaces for the very same service. And when we click here, we can see that's on standard storage, and we have a link to it. So we tend to click, but we can see that it has access denied. And we have to understand what happens when we do this and why it's access denied. The thing is, everything in AWS is as private as possible by default, as safe as possible by default. So if you don't know, if you just upload things or just create them, they will be private. So you don't, it's better to have the risk of being frustrated that you thought a page was going to happen here than to exposing information that you didn't want. So to make this public, there are lots of ways, and one way we can do this is just go to the object and just make it public. So we can see on the permissions tab, we can say that everyone can read this object, which effectively makes this public. So if I refresh this page now, not now, didn't I save this? Oh, I am on the bucket properties. I need the object properties. So the object properties already have this make public button, and now we should see our Hello Twitch page. All right. So the important thing to see here is that I didn't have to spin up a web server, install Apache, and upload a page using FTP or wherever. It's just as simple as that. Create a bucket, and it automatically handles the storage and delivery of content on the web. Okay? And another very interesting thing is when we create a bucket, as I said, the bucket name that you can see here is part of the URL, but it can be part of the DNS name. So if I paste this behind the URL, you should see the same thing, but not secure, as the certificate is global for S3, but it's essentially the same thing. We can see the same page, right? Okay, so far so good, everyone. And let's take a look at the comments. And yeah, okay. And another thing that I'd like to point out is what happens when you cut off this index.html. So let me just take a look at the chat before this, if anybody have any questions. And yeah, we're going to use HTTPS with CloudFront. We can do that today. This is a new S3 user experience, yes. So Subsidian, we're going to be talking about HTTPS and CloudFront a lot, and both for static and dynamic content, and we definitely can do HTTPS. And all right, I think this is it for the questions so far. But now my turn to ask, what's going to happen when I remove this index.html and add? You may think that this would be the default endpoint, but instead we have this weird XML. So we see there is a list bucket and the contents with my key. This is because I gave the bucket permission to be read. So a GET request on the root of the bucket is actually a list operation on the bucket, not a GET on the root of the site. So this is very different from what you guys may expect. And this is why S3 has this feature called static website hosting. If we see on the bucket page, on the management side, we can see the things we can do with the bucket, and we can use there's a lot of features here. I really want to see. Here is it can take me a while to find things in this new console as well, but here it is, static website hosting. If we enable static website hosting, we have a different endpoint. See that my old endpoint is prod breakless bike s3 amazon aws.com. The new is s3 website us east 1. This is because when I enable this, it changes the behavior of S3 for the things that we want. So I can say that on index is going to be going to index.html. I should have an error page. I don't have any right now, so I will use the same document. And once we do this, on this website, on this page, this is returning the expected result. So if you are doing static content delivery on S3, make sure you use the static endpoint and use not the regular direct S3 interface, as the behavior is more appropriate for that, right? Okay. So this is S3 websites. You can also use S3 websites to redirect requests from one place to another, but this is not necessary, at least not for now. So moving on, we have this website already, and if you are paying attention, this address, you can see that it is a regular DNS name. So this is the name you can set your CNAME to. So if I buy a domain name and I want to stream this and publish this on the web, so this is the DNS alias that I can use. The important thing is that the alias respond only to the same name as the bucket. So I would need to have the prod.breakless.bike alias to this exact CNAME. So I can probably do that. I do have this breakless bike domain. This is actually mine, and we can then map it to Route 53 and understand a bit more how the whole thing works. Okay, so this is it for storing static content on Amazon S3. One important thing to understand here is that S3 is really only for static content. It's going to pick what's in the cable and put on the disks, or pick what's in the disks and put on the cable, but not process PHP pages, Java pages, or any kind of server pages that you want. So, and we're going to understand why is that in a couple minutes, okay? And another thing is, let's take a look now at CloudFront, and this is going to be the most important part of our broadcast today. If you understand this, it's going to be a huge step. I've seen many customers not paying too much attention, and in my opinion, this is the most critical and misunderstood part in lots of web applications. When you use CloudFront, remember that we did set a region. Now we're running on the US 1 region on Virginia, right? So worldwide, everybody, even if you're in China, you have to hit the news to hit the Virginia endpoint. Wherever you are in the world, you may have a huge travel to get your content and back. If you're in the US, you're lucky, it's gonna open very fast, and if not, it's gonna open very slowly. So the first reason to use CloudFront is when you create a CloudFront distribution, it's going to use all of those blue points, or the ones you select, to deliver content. So you can have low latencies on content delivery worldwide, right? So let's just do that right now. So the following service we're going to use is CloudFront. I'll open a new tab of the console and use CloudFront. Let's create a new distribution. You can use web distributions and streaming distributions. My origin domain name is going to be that Prodless Brakeless Bike domain that I just bucket that I just created. I can specify a prefix to the path to be added to the origin. I don't have this. The objects are already on the root. The ID name for this. I can restrict the bucket to be accessible only from the CloudFront distributions, and this decision is interesting. You may want this if you're serving private content, but for public content it's better not, because you can have some smart controls over caching and leave your cache on the edges and hit the bucket directly if you want uncached content, for example. And a few more settings, nothing much so far. And one thing that may be helpful is to understand how this object caching works. And the thing to understand is CloudFront is going to respect the origin cache headers. So in this page, you can understand this table. So there's a table here that shows exactly how it behaves. So it will check this minimum and maximum TTLs and the caches. So if the instance if the backend ships a max age directive to the objects, we do have to see what's the minimum TTL. If the minimum TTL is 0, it will use the value from the max age header, or else it will use the minimum TTL. So all in all, I use the origin cache headers if they're set. You know better, you developers set a cache header, so let it respect that. But leave the minimum TTL for 0, as some things can't be cached and others can be cached for quite a long time. And the cookies that you may want to forward to your origin, in this case S3, your origin can be any kind of content. You can have an EC2 instance or even a remote website as an origin. In this case, we are using just S3. And a very cool feature is that S3, your content distribution can compress objects automatically. This meaning that HTML that I created is going to be gzipped automatically. It may increase the latency just a bit, but it will be only on the first request. Then it's going to be cached and shipped to the browser, or even already in the browser compressed. And the idea is that you will save bandwidth costs and time of transfer of those files. So it's probably a good idea to compress objects automatically. Not all objects are compressed. You can see here that there are some rules. The file must be of a file type, a compressible file type within a certain size. So, but it does compress all those kinds of files, including HTML. So let's move on with that. And now for more advanced settings, I can create alternate CNAMEs for my distribution. For example, I can say that breakless.bike is a domain that I want to use, and the price class, I can use all edge locations, meaning all those blue dots around the globe are just the ones that I create. And I'm going to I can use certificates. So let's take, there are some options for certificates. You can use the default CloudFront certificate, but if you do that, you have to use the CloudFront domain, the cloudfront.net. Or you can upload your own certificates. They would show here if I had any. Or you can request a certificate from the AWS Certificate Manager. AWS Certificate Manager is a service that generates SL certificates without any extra cost, but you can only use them on AWS services. So you can generate you can use this certificate on CloudFront, on Elastic Load Balancer, but you can't download it and use it on your server. So I will request for breakless.bike and review and make this request. So the thing is, I don't have this validated right now. I need to receive an email and see if it's on any of those accounts. I don't know if I set this up correctly, so I may have to validate this and get back to you guys. But as soon as it is, we could choose the custom SSL from the SSL certificates. All right. So this is my friend Subsidian. This is how, this is AWS own version of Let's Encrypt, but it's a bit different. As I said, this is only on the AWS side, but you do get if the feature that you want is getting certificates for free, this works pretty fine. And when it's up, we can set it and just use SSL with CloudFront. This is as far as and the thing is, there is another detail on using SSL with CloudFront, is that we have support for two types of delivery. For any client, but that requires one IP per edge location per customer, so this have an extra cost. And for clients that support server name indication, they are free, because CloudFront can reuse the IPs and doesn't have extra cost in using your certificate. So, and the thing is, all modern web browsers, even IE, the most remote versions, do support server name indication. So it makes total sense. It's not going to be available right now, but as soon as it is, I show you guys how to set it up. By now, we can just go with the default CloudFront.net certificate. All right. Oh, and another thing that may be a good idea is, as we're going to be hosting an API, if this was not S3, you may want to add other headers. This is just S3. Perhaps we have core, so we add the options header, but this is just outwards, right? So it's going to be okay. The HTTP versions, the default root object, by default, I'd like to be serving index.html. We'll be logging on or off. You can set the buckets for logs. It can be a different logging, and it can be served by IPv6. You definitely would add a comment, so I will production breakless distro, for example, and create this distribution. This will take a while to create, but while it goes on, I'd like to show you guys a few ideas on the product page. So when you think about CloudFront, there's a bit more than latency to think about. The first thing is you're going to have your content closer, of course, and less latency. The other thing to think about is costs, because all AWS services have bandwidth costs, all right? So if we go to, for example, AWS amazon.com/s3/pricing, there are basically three things that costs money in S3: the storage, the per request pricing. So every time you hit your bucket with a GET request, this costs a fraction of a penny, and so it's half a penny per 10,000 requests. And there's transfer pricing. So in this case, in S3, for S3 objects in data transfer in the US, it costs this. So usually everything that goes into AWS is free, and what goes out costs the outwards data rate that in this region is 9 cents per gigabyte. Okay, but if this is for S3, but if so, you pay the costs for this anyway as the objects flow through your distribution. But consider a different service in AWS Elastic Load Balancing, for example. Let me see if I did this correctly. In the pricing page, you can see that there is a price of a price for bandwidth. So an LCU on the application load balancer is measuring the amount of connections and bandwidth that goes through it, and so there is an extra cost. In the classic elastic load balancing, let me see if I can show you guys. It's a bit different. In the classic load balancing, the load balancing before it supported WebSockets and a whole lot of cool features, it costs 0.08 per gigabyte. So almost 1 cent per gigabyte. Although this is just a fraction of a penny, think about customers such as Netflix that delivers lots and lots of content. As far as I heard, Netflix can use more than 30% of the whole downstream internet in the US in peak times. So this may be a lot of money. So when you deliver content using CloudFront and the content goes directly from the caches, it won't pass through your load balancer. It's not going to hit your instances. It's going to be answered directly from what's in the cache. So the more you cache, the more you leverage those cost advantages. So you don't pay for the load balancer traffic, you don't pay for the CPU and memory and spinning disks on your instance, as everything is out of the cache. Okay? And another, a third point on CloudFront is that of safety, right? So think that you have just your instance, your web server on one region, and it's with a public IP directly on the internet. every attack against you is an attack directly against your instance. So you have to defend yourself, you have to understand about intrusion detection and traffic control and do everything by yourself. If you are behind a load balancer and even more behind a CloudFront distribution, the attack is first against the whole network of CloudFront edge locations and before it even reaches your server. So you have all the sophisticated security mechanisms from AWS first before any traffic gets to you. So even if your content is completely dynamic, there are a few good reasons to use CloudFront. And there are secondary ones. For example, the edge locations keep a connection, a persistent connection to the origin, and may serve content faster. And the network path from the origin to the region, from the edge to the origin, is managed by AWS. So instead of going throughout the internet in a crazy path, it's a network path with low latency managed by us. So it's really interesting that you have at the same time those three things: better performance both in terms of latency and throughput, better cost, if you're more cost efficient, and you're more secure. It's not that you're expanding more and gaining there. You are getting all those three things. You're spending less, being safer, and more performant just by using CloudFront. So I'd highly recommend that we do use that. And let's see if we are up. No, we are still in progress, and this should take a while. It's going to stay here in progress for a while, and although we can use the distribution before, I highly recommend that we wait, because the behavior of the headers is a bit different when the distribution is in progress and once it's deployed. What it's doing right now, it is shipping all those configurations to all those edge locations. So it's going to be syncing this worldwide for us for a couple minutes. And again, if at this point anybody have any questions, this would be a good time to answer them. And I will just recap. We just created the project on GitHub. I showed you guys the console, the CLI, and a bit of the SDKs. We're going to be working with that quite a lot. We stored the static page on S3. We created we did the delivery through the region with static web hosting. We have global delivery with CloudFront, right? Now it will take a while before we can test that, but very, very soon we can. So it's still in progress. Let's move on and back to it in a couple minutes. And again, this caching and expiration is really important. So there are a couple important things on this. The most important is the cache control header. So even on S3, you can set your headers. You don't need your application framework or your filters to do this for you. On S3, every object in S3 has a feature called the object metadata. So if I go to this object in its properties, there is here the metadata. And with the metadata, you can see we only have content type right now, but I can add a metadata, and the most commonly used cache headers are already here. I can select cache control and say that I want, for example, 30 seconds of cache control. So this is in seconds and will state exactly how long this object may be cached by. Well, it's going to be shipped with that header, and hopefully everybody is going to respect that. So CloudFront does respect your cache headers. Your browser will respect your cache headers unless it's a very old version of IE and things like this. But all in all, Squid proxies, everything that's in the network between should respect those headers. And as we are not delivering content through the static website anymore, it's not through the region, it's a global distribution for CloudFront. I'm disabling this static website hosting. This is a pretty good idea. So I do recommend that you use either one or another. There are lots of edge and funny things that happen when you have those mixed configurations. Okay, so let's see. Still in progress, and no problem. Let's move on with the final part of today's broadcast, the static website engines. Because what is the fun of doing this if we are not? Although building index HTML files may be fun, but the good stuff comes when we use this more advanced and mature web frameworks such as JQ, React, and GWT, and so many others. So I'll start with JQ, and let me close from here onwards, and let's understand a bit more what JQ is. So JQ, the site is jqrb.com, and JQ is a simple website engine for static websites. So this is how to get it up. So let's follow this recipe. Gem install JQ. I hope I have gems installed, and that does not take too long. So what JQ is going to provide is a templating engine where it will take all the files that I declare and just populate it. Oh, sudo that, right? So it's going to process all the files that I have locally and generate a static website that I can ship to S3. So let's do that. And the same idea goes for other static applications and everything that's a single page application framework that's going to access a REST API. So this very common trend of having a static client and a REST API is going to work here. So GWT, React, Angular, Ugo, anything at all. So we have JQ now installed, and I can JQ. So it's JQ new, breakless. Let's call it breakless JQ. Oh, yeah, there is this issue with Z shell. It's not on the path yet. So, right. cd dev broadcasts breakless. It created it. Oh, it's already there. So voila. So if we bundle exec JQ serve, again sudo gem install bundler. I'm sorry, this is a very brand new machine, so you're lucky you get to see how everything is done from the very first steps. Misplaced 1985. Did I just tell you my password? Not really. And this is it. So I hope you guys can see everything. And voila, bundle is up. And oops, this is not it. This should work now. Where's that command? Oh my god. So let me paste that again. Again, not on the direct, not on the path yet. I should fix that. All right. Oh. Bundle install. Okay. Lesson learned. Voila. Now we have Jekyll running on my local machine, and if we go to this page, we have a more interesting website now. So this is my website title, and I can just, if you see the Jekyll directory structure, let's open Atom in this directory. You can see that here in my posts directory, I have this markdown file. This is the post itself, my first post. So welcome to Jekyll. Here you'll find great stuff. And if we click here, oh yeah, I stopped serving that. So you see exactly this post. So this post was processed by Jekyll from that file using the standard layout. Here you can find Jekyll has a very interesting templating and layouting mechanism, but it used just the default theme, default template, and that's it. But this is serving from my local machine. But the thing is, I can do this instead of serving, I can build. And when I build it, it creates this underscore site directory, and this will have the generated HTML for everything. So for the home page and for the assets, and this I can just copy this to S3 and all should work fine. Or at least there are a few tricks for getting Jekyll running on S3, and we're going to see that in just a bit. But the only thing you have to be aware is the paths and locations of the files, but Jekyll trips not really related to AWS. So let's just upload that. So now we have a whole directory of files and everything that we need to ship, and I don't want to go to this and do it all the way like I did one by one and upload object by object. This would be too much trouble. So why don't we use the AWS CLI for that? So we're going to use let's check the AWS CLI page. So on the CLI reference, we have this S3 command, and on S3 we have those are the available commands. So we can copy, list, move bucket, move files, sign URLs, remove bucket, remove object, sync, and website. Sync is pretty interesting. What sync does is you give it a local path and an S3 URLs, and it will sync those files. So if you want your own version of a remote sync client, this is it. This will ship your files to S3 and back, or between S3 URLs directly. So with a lot of interesting options. So let's see what we want to do here. We want to do this is quite important, so let me give it more space. So AWS S3 sync is our base command, and we need to break that into a few things. One important thing is to add the region that you want to work. The region here is going to be West East 1, and oops, let's break the command again. And what is the local path that I want to sync? I will sync the underscore site everything with S3 prod breakless bike. Okay, so I'm just saying that I really want to sync this with this settings, and this should be good to go. Oh, I'm on a new terminal, so I should set my default profile. I already have some profile with some AWS credentials. We can talk about setting credentials for this CLI if you'd like, but this is pretty straightforward. The thing is, you can have multiple accounts on, and the AWS default profile variable will say which profile are you using, and this account I named Eden, and now we should be able to sync. So now all the files are there. Ta-da! But guess what? I replaced the thing, so we don't have the same permissions anymore. So nobody can really touch those files yet. Let's double check. If I try to connect to this file, we do get access denied. So again, now here's the important part of permissions in S3. Although you can set everything public using make public, this is a bit tedious. So I'll show you guys two ways of setting those permissions. One of those is through the command line. If we take a look at the AWS command line, there is a parameter called --ACL, and that sets the access control list for this command. So I will add this toggle here, --ACL, and it can be public read and write. Those are canned names for policies that you can use. I'll say that everybody can public read. So now all those files are would be updated with public read. So I will, but they're not changed, so it doesn't make much sense. Another thing you can set is it would only go on the upload. So one thing that I can do is AWS rm s3 rm s3 everything, just to make sure prod.breakless.bike You can use wildcards here, so a star, as long as they can find it on this keyboard, and recursive. Oh, this should be in, this should work. So this would effectively empty my bucket. So now the bucket is empty, just to make sure. And now I upload everything with public read. And now the file should be accessible. So the index HTML file now has public read permissions, and my awesome title is already here. My Jackie website is already here, as you can see. But the thing is, if we look on the network inspector, let's see those requests. You can see that it's not finding the, it's not finding the CSS file because the paths are wrong in Jekyll, the reference in the HTML file, but it's just a matter of setting the Jekyll configuration. Another way to set this, let's do this again. So I'm going to remove everything and create again without the ACL public. So now it's not public anymore. We should not be able to reach this. And now the thing is, what if I want that every object that's put here to be public by default? So this is done by a bucket policy. Using a bucket policy, you can state different permissions. The default is nothing, no permissions at all. But in the documentation for policies, we have one for the anonymous user. So if we see the bucket policy examples, there is this one here, granting read-only permissions to an anonymous user. And here you can see how it works. We can just say, this is the same language that's used throughout all of AWS, so I highly recommend you understand this. Just the version number of the language, no big deal here. Statements, assertions, authorization assertions. I can give it any name. I am effectively allowing any principal, whoever it is, anonymous user, to get object. This is the API call that I am allowing to everybody on a given resource. So every resource in AWS has a name, Amazon resource name, or ARN, to identify it uniquely. So here you have to provide the ARN for your bucket. And mine is prod. I'll replace with the bucket name, prod.breakclass.bike. And now everything is public by default in this bucket. Okay, so if I refresh this page now, you should be able to see the same Jekyll site. Okay, and it works pretty much the same way in any framework that you are using. So let's try React, as that is pretty popular these days. So there is a project, React Create Project, a simple application to help us create React projects. So let's create projects, create app. Yeah, that's it. So sync minus delete is helpful for your website. Yeah, there is this option on the command line. It's minus delete. It's very, very useful. So because by default it does not delete files on S3. If you specify delete, it will clean files that doesn't exist anymore. So yes, that's pretty useful. Thanks a lot, Eric Hammond. And oh, nice to see you here, mate. And this on Create React App, this is a project to help us create and bootstrap our React applications. So this should be pretty straightforward. Let's see how it goes on S3. And I will create, let's move out of Jekyll and create React app. Install the thing first. I guess I should have sudo this, don't know, let's see. No, oh, npm doesn't need it. All right, so I will create, instead of my app, let's call it breakless React. And just checking this. And in a while, we should be ready to create our first React application. While that goes on, let's check the CloudFront manager and see that our application is in place. So yay, our distribution is deployed. Now I have a domain name here. This is the domain name from the CloudFront distribution. And if we type it in, welcome to Jekyll. So this is our brand new Jekyll website. How cool is that? So see, the thing to take away here is using tools such as Jekyll, you can have a very full-featured web blog with even comments are supported using external APIs such as Discuss, and things like RSS are also there because you can template XML and whatnot, and everything hosted by S3 and costing pennies to operate. You don't need a server, you don't need to install a CMS or anything like that. Just generate your website, push it up to S3, distribute it globally with CloudFront, and you're done. So yeah, this is live. You guys can, I will even paste it on Twitch chat, and you can hit it if you guys would like. So everything that we do here is live. I hope that those we actually end up building this. I really want to see the products and getting it up, and APIs and data coming in and flowing together, and we analyzing and using machine learning and everything that AWS has to offer. But first we have to go through this a bit tedious steps of building HTML files. So, but this is going to work, guys, and this is live. I do hope you guys send me your impressions, requirements, feedbacks. Just send your comments here or on Twitter, and I would love to see and understand what you guys, what direction you guys want this to take, because we can do a lot of stuff. We can add requirements, we can add other languages, either spoken languages or computer languages, and really want to see your feedback on this. So now it is started. If we go to our breakless React directory, let's test it locally first. Npm start. Ta-da! It opens my web browser, and we do have the React app up and running. So this is our first React app. So let's even edit this so that I'm not stealing. Oh, it's not BG1 on Z shell. I hope this was not terminated. It was, of course. So let's do atom. Let's atom this and edit app.js. So our main React file is here. Hey, we got our React application. So instead of welcome to React, I'm gonna write welcome to Twitch. Welcome to AWS Twitch. Okay. All right. React taught us how to do this, how to build the site with run build. So it should be creating everything. All right, so instead of, the difference is instead of underscore site, it's build, but we can use the same commands. The difference is I'm going to, I have a bucket policy, so I don't need ACL. I'm gonna use -- delete so that everything is deleted for us. I don't need to remove everything, so everything that Jekyll created is going to be deleted. And one very important option is to set cache control. So again, on the sync page, we do have a cache control option. So I can say here, oops, that I want cache control. I just need, if I can only find the key. So, but I guess this should work. No, not this one, this one. Yeah. Max age equals 0 or 15 or whatever. And this will be respected by CloudFront. Well, Jekyll versus Wix, what's the best? That's a pretty hard question. I've been testing all those static website generators. I've been doing Jekyll. There's also Hugo and many others. I think the general idea is Jekyll is the most full-featured, and of course this is not site. Now it's called build. Jekyll is very full-featured, but it was the first. And being the first is hard because all those others have pretty good lessons learned that doesn't work very well on Jekyll. And so they do usually offer something better, especially that Jekyll is in Ruby. Perhaps you want something in JavaScript or in Go, so there are very similar things for other languages. But the thing is, if your value is what is more established community, existing plugins, and conference around it, and this is Jekyll by any means. But if you want to be on the cutting edge and try new features, then those others may be more interesting for you. So now we are syncing our React app to our Breakless website, and now instead of, oops, this is it, instead of the Jekyll website, this is the one on our URL. Now we should have the React application. So welcome to AWS Twitch that we just edited, and it's our very own static web app delivered directly to S3. So I hope that you guys enjoy that. This is the one thing to understand here is the impact of this. So for example, if you have PHP or ASP or any server pages at all where you have the content mixed with the API calls, it's very hard to determine what is cacheable and what is not. So using those static frameworks, you can usually have much better control at caching. For example, GWT offers perfect caching by generating MD5 or hashes based on the content of the file names, of the contents of the file. So every time it changes, it's a new hash, and you can set that to cache forever. And this kind of trick that's used in most modern web frameworks are very, very useful because they make your application being able to be delivered by the whole network, the whole CDN from CloudFront, and not hitting your servers. So you are, again, more performant, cheaper, and safer at the same time. Okay, so this is how it works. So to wrap up, this is what we have done today. So this channel is for developers. It's for you. I really want to interact with you guys. Thanks for all of your comments on the Twitch chat. I hope you do come back for the next session. We plan to be here weekly, and I will update the details on the agenda, schedule, contents, and everything. Just if you'd like, I will just show you guys a bit more information about that. So let me get it's here on JM Fireman on Twitter or on twitch.tv/AWS. You can find everything about our Twitch stream. And please, again, do send your tweet, your comments my way. I'll be happy to accommodate any requirements you may have. This is a beginner's friendly talk. This one today is pretty superficial, but we touched on some important points, and we did already some coding. And I want to dive pretty deeply, and this is going to be very technical and deep. The only thing that I want to make sure is that beginners feel welcome, and I'm going to answer any question that you guys may have. And to reach the broadest audience, I'm speaking in English and JavaScript first, so we're starting with that, but we can expand to other languages, other frameworks, anything you guys might want to see. And although I do value your input a lot, I needed something to begin with, and we decided to start with creating applications for collecting and transacting data, making analysis on this data, visualizing it, learning from it. So on the next broadcasts, we're going to be coding all the forms, the uploads, the image processing, the data analytics, the streaming, IoT, whatever it is that you guys want to see on this channel, just let me know. And this is the things you can see onwards from today. And on this specific first day, we created and shared an open source project. Let me just commit this code so it's available for you guys. So here is everything we have done today. I will just set my credentials. Yeah, that's it. And first broadcast. And one thing to do before that, I should probably add just the sources, not the build files. Just making sure that those files are not pushed. So everything here looks like it's good to go. Git, about, game file, index, markdown, no build stuff, no public stuff, and looks good. Anyway, if there's anything wrong, I can always remove that later, just so you guys can have a reference. So I do believe that's going to commit something wrong, but anyway, it's pushed. just making sure. So you guys have all the files in my GitHub repo, and again, it's jfireman/breakless on GitHub that we just created, and just making sure github.com/jfireman/breakless, like this. So this is all we done today. And oh, so this is another premise. So it's open source software, English and JavaScript first. And we talked about the console, the CLI, the SDK. We saw how to store content on S3 and how that works. We saw that using static website hosting, we can deliver content straight out of S3, but that's from one specific region. Using CloudFront, we can deliver content globally with better performance, lower cost, and more security. And we also talked a lot about caching and content expiration. Make sure you understand and set your content caches, because the more you cache, the less traffic you have. The less traffic you have, the more performant and less costly you are. And we talked about static website engines. They can be either blog engines such as JQ, Hugo, and many others, or application frameworks that are single page application frameworks such as GWT, Angular, or React. We started with a React, as that was the favorite in my Twitter poll. And I really do thank you very much for being here and spending this time with me. I look forward to seeing you again, and let's build. Bye bye.